Hello gremlins, and welcome to our first video lesson. I guess that's what we're gonna call it. Hope you guys had a fabulous spring break and that you are all safe and healthy. I miss you guys. I actually wish you were here.
Even though the room is like definitely cleaner without you guys.
But anyway, let's jump into today's lesson. Today, we are talking about the Industrial Revolution. Remember that revolution can mean change, and in this case, we are going to see a lot of change in American industry. We're gonna see America go from like hand production to factories. So this time also saw a ton of new innovations and a ton of new inventions. Today, we are going to be talking about two things. One, the steps of the industrialization process. Two, I can't even remember, important inventions from that time period. After you watch this video, you are then going to go take a very short quiz on this. I promise it'll be easy. So let's get going. So the whole factory system actually didn't start in America. It started in our favorite mother country, Britain, back in the 1700s. And we've kind of talked about it before because if you guys remember, like Hamilton wanted to be like Britain, and a big part of that was the system of factories they were developing because it was making them so much money. So we are going to see how Hamilton's vision for America came true with the steps of industrialization. So it's actually phases of industrialization. I don't know why I called it steps, but anyway. Phase 1, divide the tasks. So let's explain this using textiles. If you had one person spinning the thread and then one person weaving the cloth, it's gonna go a lot quicker than if you had one person spinning the thread and weaving the cloth. Phase 2, build factories. This is gonna be a place for you to gather your specialized workers. Which leads us to the last phase, phase 3. This is when you're gonna start to use machinery to do some of those tasks. So if we're going back to the textile example, it would go a lot quicker if you had a machinery actually doing the weaving of the cloth instead of a person doing it, right? So more and more of these industries start to follow that industrialization process, and factories begin to take over America. Actually, factories started to take over in one area of America, the North. The South was still very focused on agriculture. Remember that, it'll help you on your quiz. All right, now let's start to talk about some inventions.
Do you know what this is? If you don't, I'll give you a hint. You probably used one in 7th grade. That's right, the sewing machine. If you've ever been curious about what the man who invented the sewing machine looks like, don't you worry, I got you. This is him. Fabulous. I know. The guy's name was Elias Howe. He was actually British, but eventually the sewing machine does make its way over to America in the 1800s. The purpose of the sewing machine, believe it or not, was to sew clothes, but also produce clothing on a massive scale. And if you're going, wow, we're really talking about a sewing machine right now, this had a big effect on America, guys, because you have to think about it. We go from one person making articles of clothing, they might be able to make 5 articles of clothing a day if they're really good at what they do, to factories being able to make hundreds, maybe thousands of articles of clothing a day. So how did this invention affect America? Clothing was mass produced. It was cheaper, you had more of it. I mean, some of you guys really like clothes, so I'm sure that sounds awesome. And then women started working in textile mills.
So as we move on to our next invention, let's remind ourselves what we know about rivers. We know there are a lot of rivers in America, at least in the East, not so much in the West. And we know that people preferred to transport things by the rivers because you could do so faster than if you tried to do the same thing on land. But some people at the start of the 1800s were wondering if you could transport things even faster on rivers.
This is a picture of our next invention. In case you don't know what this is a picture of, let me help you out. It's a steamboat. So who invented it? His name was Robert Fulton. There's a picture of the guy in case you're interested, but he's gonna go away now. It was invented in 1807. The purpose of this invention, as you can probably guess, was transportation, both transportations of good and transportations of people. It was hugely popular as soon as it was invented because it suddenly led to cheap and quick transportation. People didn't have to paddle anymore, they could just hop on a steamboat and they could set off to their destination.
Our next invention also uses steam and will also feature a few little glimpses of our class mascot, Buster the Bobcat.
I really hope you know what this is. You're right, it's a train. More specifically, though, it's a locomotive. So here's a fun fact for you. The first locomotives were actually horse-drawn. Yeah, they were pulled by horses until this guy named Peter Cooper had the idea to use the steamboat technology and put those into locomotives and have them steam-drawn. So he created one in 1830. Here's a picture of the guy in case you're interested and want to admire his beard for a second.
Dear Mr. Cooper's first locomotive was actually called Tom Thumb, and it got off to a pretty embarrassing start. You see, Mr. Cooper tried to race Tom Thumb against a horse-drawn train, and Tom Thumb's engine failed. So that was kind of embarrassing.
Even though the steam locomotive got off to kind of an embarrassing start, it eventually was perfected and it became the new invention that everybody was just obsessed with. So the purpose of this was obviously transportation. How did it affect America? Okay, it really, really affected America. It opened up the West to more people. Suddenly people could travel, and they could travel a lot easier than walking 2,000 miles or going by horse. Goods moved faster and cheaper than ever before. And the fun news with that was that because transportation was now cheaper, that actually lowered the prices of a lot of things.
So we know that the railroad played a huge role in bringing people out to the West, and also played a huge role in Utah's history.
We know that railroad fever gripped the United States, but all of the railroads were mainly located in the East, and so this led to the railroad race. One railroad company started building from the west, the other from the east, and they were desperately trying to make it to their meeting place before the other did. That meeting place happened to be Promontory Summit right here in Utah, which you can go visit today. Maybe you can even visit it during this pandemic because it's probably not that busy. You too can be like Buster and go visit.
He travels. Okay, listen closely for a hint at what our next invention is.
If that noise made like 0 sense to you, then maybe this picture will help you out. And if this picture makes 0 sense to you, then I'm just going to tell you what this is. This is the telegraph, alright? So it was invented by many people, but Samuel Morse was among them. It was invented in the 1830s and the 1840s. Here's a picture of the guy for you as I tell you the story of what went down. So telegraph wires had been invented, but we lacked a code to actually send messages over these. And I want you to like picture telephone wires, okay? That's what this looked like. And then Samuel Morse came around and he invented his famous code called the Morse code. It uses 2 different signal durations called dots or dashes, and they translate to this alphabet that you can look up in case you're curious. So also, if you're wondering, that message that you guys heard was actually probably the most famous message you can send over Morse code, which is SOS. So the purpose of the telegraph and the Morse code was communication. And how did it affect America? Communication sped up like crazy. People were loving this. They could send messages further and quicker than they ever had been able to before. So wires went up like crazy. This spread like crazy across America. And just like the railroad, this also helped connect the East and West and truly brought the country together. Here's a picture of our last invention, and I am very curious to know if any of you guys actually know what this is. Unfortunately, I don't really have a way to find that out right now, so let me just tell you. This is the cotton gin. It was invented by a man named Eli Whitney back in 1793, and it's probably one of the most important inventions of all time. Now, the purpose of this invention was it actually took a piece of raw cotton and separated cotton fibers from the seeds. This sped up production. I need you guys to keep in mind that raw cotton only kind of resembles a cotton ball. Instead, it looks like this. Buried in those fibers are a bunch of seeds that people used to have to pick out by hand, and it would take forever. But when the cotton gin came around, it led to this. A machine that would pick out the seeds, like you can see right here, leaving you with that nice fiber to make some clothes out of. The cotton gin had a giant effect on America. It revolutionized the cotton industry, and this was going to make the South very, very rich. There was also a dark side to this because it led to the growth of slavery in the South.
We will be talking more about slavery in the South soon. So just to wrap it all up, America began to become very industrialized in the 1800s, which is why this is called the Industrial Revolution. We talked about the phases of industrialization and how that started to take over one particular area of America, the North. And we also went over these different inventions. Okay, your next step is to go take your quiz, so good luck on that, and I will catch you guys next time I make a video.